you're called to something, you know it. The summer after I accepted Christ at 15, I'm in a kind of a cabin and at church camp, my first one ever, and I had this dream, and I'm standing in front of a group of students and just teaching God's word and sharing the gospel, and I pop right up, the middle of the night on a Wednesday, go, oh my gosh, God, this is what God's calling me to do.
Working with the local church to take the hope of Christ to every student in the United States. This is First Priority. Now here are your hosts, Steve Cherico and Brad Skelling.
Well, welcome everybody to the podcast. My name is Steve Cherico. I am flying solo without my friend Brad Schelling, which means we get to pick on him the entire time. Those of you who are watching today with us on the vidcast will see that I've got a new friend and neighbor. Not new to me, though.
True.
Not new to me. Maybe new to some of you. Others of you are going to step up and say, listen, we've known Jeffrey I just did it, didn't I? We've known Jeffrey a long time. So, Jeff, if you want to introduce yourself, this is your intro vidcast to the First Priority world.
Yeah.
And again, not new to you either. So just introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, Jeff Stanford. I am the newly director of First Priority in the Ozarks.
Were you going to say newly crowned?
No, I was not going to say that.
I wouldn't have blamed you. I was hoping so.
No, newly crowned was not going to go there.
All right.
No, long process and effort. Some of your viewers and listeners know that we've been working to launch the Ozarks the last couple of years, and here we are, and we're just super excited about what God is doing now, but more excited about what He's going to do in the years to come.
That's good. So there are some who listen and watch this that are familiar with you and your story. Mm-hmm. But would you take us back to just kind of your entrance to South Florida, your involvement in that team, and then what God did that actually got you to the Springfield, Missouri area, which we are calling the Ozarks?
Yeah. So we had. I was graduated college in '99, married my wife, and stayed in South Florida. Was a student pastor for 12 years at one church, and awesome. Long time. But was a campus coach. For a couple schools there in the South Florida Wellington area, and about 2010 was just like, okay, God, what are you doing? And then South Florida was at the time looking for a director for Palm Beach, Treasure Coast, and they had kind of heard that I was like looking to move on to something else, and so they had a meeting, and then years later, came on staff with them and helped grow the ministry there in South Florida. And then 2020 made the announcement that we were moving to Springfield, Missouri. And so in that process, basically what happened was my brother-in-law and sister-in-law had moved to Springfield. He opened a local Geico office.
Interesting.
There in Springfield. And so we went out and visited a few times, and I love connecting with youth pastors and just kind of getting a feel for where everything's at. And so met with them and told them a little bit about First Priority, a little bit of that elevator speech. Hey, this is what First Priority is, what we do. And they really leaned in and was like, oh man, we need this here. And then God just kind of prompted, and here we are. We move in the middle of a pandemic, which was
good choice on that one. Nice job.
Interesting. The roads were great. Traffic was great, but finding a spot to eat was a whole
I bet.
Game. But it was good. And I've got two kids. Courtney is 21, soon to be 22, elementary ed major, Missouri State, and just fantastic. And then my son Austin, he's 16, and he's just loving school and doing that and working his new job. And Brandy and I, my wife, we're kind of in that different place in life where it's like, okay, we're kind of coming back to this couple, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been the last year or so has been really good, for us, our marriage, and but in this process of building and getting First Priority launched has just been just definitely a God thing. You see God in a lot of it. So.
So a couple things that come to mind as you tell part of your story. One is I've got a 15, almost 16-year-old. We mentioned off the air before, they're both very much Pokemon players, right? They're all about Pokemon Go. They're all about that world, the cards, all of that. So that's a unique connection for you and I. Maybe not so unique with that age, but okay. And then the other one is, and I've talked to Shane Kinney about this before because, we self-label or have been labeled missionaries, right? We're American missionaries. We're called to train students to be missionaries on their campus, right? But you left Paradise to go to Springfield, Missouri, and no shots at Springfield. Again, those of you who watch podcasts, my kid is getting ready to go to school there, right? No shots, but you left South Florida to go to the Midwest. Talk a little bit, if you don't mind, just about what was going on in your and Brandy's heart that you went from a discovery to oh crap, we're moving.
Yeah, it was. When my brother-in-law opened the office there, he really wanted my wife to come work for him. She's a back ends, systems, that kind of person, and she had worked with him at the company that they were at together in Florida, and so that was part of the maybe kind of made it a little bit the biggest draw. Yeah, sure. To that, but we just fell in love with the Ozarks. It's funny, like everybody says, oh, you left South Florida, and yeah, I left 90 degrees at Christmas, and I left hurricane season. There's a lot of things that people go to the beach for a vacation. Sure. When you live there, it's just where you live. Yeah. And and it was that timing where it was like we could have stayed and things still would have continued to be great. Right. And we could move and start something different and start something new from the ground up in a spot where most people think is the buckle of the Bible Belt from that 20,000 foot perspective. But when you actually dive into the community, you realize that buckle is not even just tarnished, it's been ripped off. Interesting. The Midwest has become kind of a proving ground for just all things anti-God, anti-church, you name it, it's all there. Students that we met along the way over the years, like, man, our schools are just as lost as any school in the country. Wow. Churches are shells of what they once were. It's really one of those spots where most people don't think. They're like, oh, we got another ministry, we got another church, and you're like, no. Just run around town at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and your eyes begin to open. Like, oh yeah, no, this place is becoming very de-churched very quickly, and in realizing that because of that, our generation is very much that de-churched kind of generation that's there. A lot of them burned and hurt by church. Well, now they're kids, middle school and high school students. They're unchurched. Exactly right. I've met tons of students who've never set foot in a church building before, and you're in the heartland. You're in the spot where, the home of the Assemblies of God, home of the, Baptist Bible Fellowship, the Independent Baptist. We got a, decent sized Southern Baptist school in the area. You would think it's a somewhat churched area as you drive around and you see churches in every corner. But as I said, when you drive around on Sunday morning, those parking lots are nearly empty and everybody else isn't in church. And, pastors, people that I've talked to that live there for a long time, they're like, yeah, the church decline here is happening rapidly. Yeah. And you see that on campus. Yeah, that resonates with Nashville in a big way. There's a lot of that is a parallelism to the town that we currently are sitting in right now. So I think one other piece of the story that I would love to highlight is you're a district for First Party of America. Correct. We've talked in detail on this podcast before. For those of you who are listeners that are new, we've talked in detail about the difference between district and chapter and why those exist. But we'll forego that for now, okay? But there's a but in there. You were part of a chapter in South Florida that is one of the oldest and one of the strongest. You leave that, and in your missionary moment, you become a tent builder because you joined the Geico office as well. Correct. Right? And one of the things I love about your story, I'm going to take a little piece of it and then set you up, is I know that in your time there, your brother-in-law was like, there's no reason for me to let him go.
There's no. I'm proud of him. I want him to go do the thing God's called him to. But you very easily could have just stayed in and built a career in the Geico world and maybe opened your own office, maybe done that, and raised your family, and there would have been nothing wrong with that, right? So what's the drumbeat that caused you to say, man, I'm going to keep raising funds. I'm going to find a way to fund this district so I can actually make this my full-time gig. What beat that drum that caused you to say, I got to get back out of that and back into this?
Man, I tell you what, it's, when you're called to something, you know it. And nothing against the local Geico office, but, and even, my brother-in-law and his partner, and, they're just like, man, we know that this is not Jeff's heartbeat.
Interesting.
They wanted me to succeed in First Priority from day one. They knew that working at Geico was a means to an end. Yeah. And and they've kind of built that culture in that office, which I absolutely love. They want those guys to know and realize that, we want you to move on. We want you to, let this be a spot to set you up for success.
That's good.
And so that's kind of a little bit of the culture that was built in that office, which is phenomenal. But it was my calling. Yeah. It's I go all the way back to, the summer after I accepted Christ at 15. I'm in a kind of a cabin and at church camp, my first one ever. And I had this dream, and I'm standing in front of a group of students and just teaching God's word and sharing the gospel. And I pop right up, the middle of the night on a Wednesday, go, oh my gosh, God, this is what God's calling me to do. And, and that calling has not changed. The way it looks been different, but the calling is still the same. But even being in Springfield and being there and hearing student stories and being on campuses and coaching track and field in one of the high schools, and that has really been eye-opening of like, how are they going to know unless somebody is called? How are they going to know unless somebody is sent? How are they going to know unless somebody tells them the good news of Jesus? Yep. And when they're not getting it at home, they have this kind of weird thing about the church, but when peers are excited about sharing the gospel, that's what gives me energy, is sitting in the classroom and watching a kid share the gospel and see a couple hands go up. That fires me up for the rest of the day. Exactly. And and that's what kind of keeps that beat going, as you said. Good.
That's good. All right, as we begin to land this plane, I have 2 softballs I'm going to throw you. We have 3 major audiences in the podcast vidcast. Pretty interesting. We've got the directors, coordinators, even some of the campus coaches that own areas that aren't staffers, but they're like, hey, I own this area, I might as well be staffer, right? You just don't pay me, and that's fine. That's probably the best job ever, right? So we've got that. We've got the students that are on campus that are just, I'm a missionary and I'm going to eat every bit of this, okay? So the last group we've got is this group that is trying to figure out, hey, God's doing something with me. And so I'm going to throw you 2 softballs to 2 of those groups. Number 1, you're a tenured director that is doing new things, right? That's super unique and super interesting, right? So I want to ask you, again, I'm going to give you 2. I want to ask you just to encourage and talk to them for a minute. The guys and gals that are out there that they've been doing this for a minute can be 12 months. It could be 4 years, right? And encouraging them to stay in the race, right? The second one is to encourage that group of people that, hey, God's doing something with me and I really don't know how to put my finger on it, right? I haven't figured it out yet, but and just encourage them in the process of that, if you wouldn't mind. So first one and then second one, I'll leave you the mic.
Yeah, so for if you're currently in that staff role with First Priority, you're working and moving, you're a campus coach, you're a director, you're an area coordinator, whatever the case may be. Man, you are doing what God has called all of us to do. Good. And that's go and make disciples. Good. We're called to, in Jude, snatch people from the fire, so to speak, and that's what we're called to do. That's our calling as believers. And even in those times when you have that invite week, that is like it's the same 15 students. Yep. Good. That the gospel still shared. The gospel is still presented clearly. There's clearly a response time, because you never know when it's going to click for a student. In that, just keep pushing forward. Even in the midst of those times, you're like, why am I doing this? Just lean into God. Let Him just like show you why.
It's good.
And just continue to push through that. There's always another student. There's always another club, and we keep pushing forward until every student in every middle school and high school has an opportunity to hear the good news of Jesus and have the opportunity to trust in Him. That is our goal. That is our mission. That is our vision. The hope of Christ in every student.
Yeah, it's good.
And we want to change that. So
love that.
And so for those who are like, God, what am I doing? What are you doing? What are you pushing? Lean into Him. Lean in. Let God show you the path, right? I mean, He's the lamp to our feet, the light to our path. Trust that. There's times, and listen, and I'll be completely transparent and honest. The 3 years from 2020 up until now, it was hard.
Of course. Man,
I had some hard times. I lost my dad. I broke my back. Just the struggle of like, okay, not a dollar's been raised, and yet we're still trucking forward. And it's like, okay, we're trying to push this up this hill, perseverance is so key. Just keep, okay, God, like God, just lean into Him and let Him show you. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. But if you're teetering on the edge of, should I be doing a first priority club? Don't. Just do it.
Yeah, good.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Just step into it. Take the leap, because it works. Kids come to Christ.
Yeah.
Kids get connected to church.
Yep.
And there's nothing greater than that. There's nothing greater than walking into your church on a Sunday and you see, if you're a student, you see your friend show up.
Yep.
That came to club.
Yeah.
Or you see their parents show up. If you're a youth pastor, you're seeing your students live out what you're teaching them on a weekly basis. The after effects of this are just like we can sit here and tell stories all day about kids that have gone through first priority and what God's doing in their life now. And so just lean into God and let Him guide, let Him direct your steps. And so, and I think that really bodes for all of us, in those times, because we're always thinking, okay, God, what's next? What's around the corner? And He's just like, just trust me. Just let me walk you. Let me lead you through that. And you at the end of the day, you won't be disappointed.
That's good. One of the things that I appreciate about what you just said is you and I have mutual friends throughout this, and they're not just first priority leaders, they're campus leaders all over the country, that after 15, after 20, after 25 years, the idea of seeing students come to Christ, the idea of hearing students share the gospel, like all of that thing that we do over and over again, it never gets old.
No.
It never gets old. It doesn't matter if it's in New York City. It doesn't matter if it's in Los Banos, California. It doesn't matter if it's down in Austin, Texas, right? It never gets old. And I love that about this opportunity. So thanks for that encouraging word. That's really cool.
Amen. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Glad to call you and your wife now. Now that I've met her, glad to call you guys friends, and look forward to seeing what God's going to do in the future.
And look forward to encouraging your son.
Thank you for that.
And having somebody there to help him out. So that's kind of the beauty about the first priority family, is like we're everywhere.
Well, he's already been told he's got to be one of your campus coaches once he gets his feet on the ground.
That's right.
And he's all in.
I already got the school ready to go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, friends, thanks for joining us once again for the podcast. Like, share, comment. We certainly appreciate that. If you've got comments, you'd like to hear more from other directors, or if you're a director and you're like, hey, why have I not been on the podcast yet? Don't be scared to throw it in there. Until next time, we'll see you soon.